After a long and arduous journey, Bariza, the head tax official, stood in the presence of the king, along with the king's spokesman and scribe, and the head of the king's soldiers in charge of tax collation. As soon as all the report of the journey had been read out to the king, he looked angrily at Bariza. "An attack on the king's soldier is an attack on the king himself," he exclaimed. "Fear is the foundation of loyalty. Will a prey ignore the call of a roaring lion? When a ruler hesitates to crush dissent, he plants the seed of his own downfall. The crown is heavy, and only a king can bear its weight." "My king," Bariza said, as he signals to the female palace maidens to bring in the basket samples of all the goods they can fit into the palace courtyard. Sitting on his throne, with 2 palace guards standing on each side, Dabota looks in anticipation of seeing his prize. And so in front of the king were brought goods and treasures for the pleasure of the king's eyes. The scribe and spokesman begins to read aloud. "Gold and precious jewels, iron and bronze from the west of the kingdom. From the south, abundant clothing, fabric of silk weaved with gold and silver thread of royal colors, only fit for the king. The rarest commodity in all of the kingdom, salt in massive quantities." The king voiced out in excitement. "The farmers' fields from the east also brought in a bountiful harvest, and a produce of a different kind from the village of Ngede."
While the spokesman was yet speaking, King Dabota caught sight of Sabi standing in the midst of the basket samples of foodstuff in the courtyard.
"Must I also have a share of the bush rat that plagues the farmers' fields as well?" the king said, as he laughed out loud, and everyone in the palace laughed with him.
"I'm not a bush rat,"
Sabi replied, as her response immediately brought their laughter to a stop. Everyone present in the palace gasped in surprise. Does she not know where she is, or to whom she dares reply? Full-grown men have lost control of their bowel when brought before King Dabota. Dabota always believed that for a kingdom to be strong, the weak must find purpose in silent obedience. But here in front of him is a mouse who dares squeak in the face of a lion. "Step forward," King Dabota called out. Sabi walked confidently, without any fear in her eyes or in her step. But palace etiquette required that everyone not part of the royal house should always stand 10 paces away from the king at all times. But no one told Sabi this, for she was not one to hold back in fear. Bariza's shoulders dropped. Certainly she would not last a day. As the guards moved forward to stop her from advancing any further, the king raises his hands to stop them. Still feeling guilty that her hastiness had caused her father so much pain, she stopped immediately. "Girl, what is your name?" the king asked. "Sabi, from the house of Benigo, daughter of Laban, his son." "So this is the daughter of the farmer who dares to raise his hand to one of my soldiers. Since you have a mouth to speak, tell me, what do you think of your father's disrespect?" Sabi thought carefully of the words she should say, for the next word she utters, if not chosen wisely, could cost her entire village, including her family. She quickly remembers stories told to her by her mother and grandmother about a young boy named Tamu. Once every year, Tamu had to go deep into the forest to collect herbs for his blind mother, a basket weaver, and his father, a crippled man. They relied on him for this crucial task, and so with cunning, he learned to evade the hyenas by cleverly covering his scent with a spray from a skunk so that he could also outsmart any lurking lions. The boy's goal was simple: fetch the herbs and return safely. And this Tamu always did. Each time he would go out, his mother would sit outside the house, singing a song for her son. However, she would never complete the song, because from a distance, Tamu would join in to finish the song himself, letting her know that he had returned safely. Sabi understood that she had to stay safe for her mother, defend the honor of her father, without incurring the anger of the king, for he was known to be a ruthless king showing no mercy. O wise and noble king, your servant my father works only to protect the wealth of the king. Looking straight at the king, she continues, he taught me that your reign in our land shines the brightest ever since your enemies have been defeated. It shows in the happiness and prosperity of your people, as I myself have come to see with my own eyes. As she then puts on a show of amazement of how grand the palace looked, the nobles in the palace nodded their heads in approval. Saribo, the king's right-hand man, shouted at the top of his lungs, "May you live long, O king!" The whole palace replies in one voice, "So shall it be." Bariza's mouth dropped open, concealing a smile. In that moment, she knew she no longer had the protection of her father and the clever and wise counsel of her mother and grandmother. In that moment, she became the little boy in her grandmother's stories who had to cover her scent with the spray of a skunk so as not to be devoured by a lion. "Your father has taught you well," the king says. "Nanima, the heart of a lion, will be your new name," for he was impressed with the tenacity in her voice and the fearlessness in her eyes. "Take her to Amero, so she can learn the ways of the royal house at once," the king commands. Mama Omero, as she is affectionately known in the palace, was in charge of all the royal garb and fabric. The exquisite thread for weaving were all in her care. But the people in the palace would say, her mouth could weave words faster than her hands could weave thread. She was a woman of very little patience and had no tolerance for anyone under her care who did not follow instructions. She knew Sabi would be a handful.